He lived alone so long the silence had learned his name. Before we step into what changed him, remember to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because this story travels far and it carries weight. Reed Holston guided the tired mule team down the main stretch of Redstone Crossing with the same steady patience he used for everything that kept his ranch from slipping apart. Dust coated his coat the color of the road itself. His beard had gone too long without a blade, and his eyes had that pale, washed-out gray that comes from years of sun, wind, and squinting into open distance. He passed storefronts, men, horses, and noise without slowing to study any of it, because Reed didn't come to town to look at people. He came for salt, coffee, lamp oil, nails, and a new whetstone to replace the one that had split clean through. That was it. In and out. No lingering. He told himself that every time. The last time he'd stayed past sundown, some drunk had started talking about the war, the dead, and Reed's work as a Union scout. Reed had gone quiet and left because there was nothing he could say that would fix what was already buried. His wife had been dead 10 years now, laid to rest on the hill behind the cabin beneath a simple cross and a stone he'd turned with his own hands. The ranch was half alive on good days, less than that on bad ones, but it was still standing. That was his purpose now. Keep it standing, keep the fence rails mended, keep himself fed, keep the days moving straight forward without circling back. He would have gone straight to the general store if not for the sound spilling out of the old livery yard. Men gathered too close together, some laughing, some spitting, others wearing that empty, bored attention that comes when cruelty starts to feel like entertainment. Reed didn't slow because he wanted to. He slowed because the path narrowed with bodies, and because he heard words that cut through the noise. Auction, last one left, worthless. His hands tightened slightly on the reins before he set the brake and stepped down. He saw her immediately, chained to a rough-hewn post, iron biting into her wrists until the skin was red and raw. She stood upright, not stiff, not slumped, just upright, chin level, eyes focused on nothing directly ahead. The way someone learns to look through men instead of at them. Her dress was torn, deer skin with fringe that had once been placed carefully, beads and feathers still clinging in places. The neckline was ripped low, exposing the top of her chest and the curve of her cleavage, and there was no attempt to hide it, because there was no extra cloth and because modesty had never protected her from anything. Her skin carried the warm copper tone of the country she came from, sun-worked, strong. The muscles along her arms and calves spoke of working, surviving, without breaking. She was young, maybe 24. Her hair was long, black, tangled, parts still braided, parts torn loose by wind and rough handling. Men jeered at her. Reed could see it in their mouths, in the lazy way they leaned too close. She didn't react. She didn't give them anything. A man beside Reed muttered without looking at him, just announcing it to the air. 3 days. Others sold quick, not her. Wouldn't kneel, wouldn't cry, just stands there, he spat. Folks say she's cursed, or stubborn. Reed's jaw worked once. He stepped closer. The woman's eyes shifted and landed on him. There was no plea in them, no hope, just a quick, sharp reading of him, the way someone checks for danger and decides what comes next. Reed knew that look. He'd worn it after the war, still wore it some mornings when memory woke before he did. He could leave. He knew that. Buy his supplies, go home, mend fences, oil the lantern, sit by the fire and think about nothing. Until Sunday came and he walked up the hill to the grave and said nothing had changed. But he also knew if he left, she'd still be there when the sun went down, and the man who came next wouldn't have his restraint. Reed reached into his coat, found the folded bills and counted coins he'd checked twice that morning. How much? He asked the trader, voice rough from lack of use. The man blinked, surprised Reed spoke at all, then named a price that was more than she was worth to him now, but less than Reed carried. Reed didn't haggle. He placed the money in the man's hand. The man shrugged, unlocked the chains. You want a bill of sale? No, the chains fell. She didn't rub her wrists. She didn't move until Reed turned away. Then she followed, because standing still wasn't safer than walking. And every choice left to her was bad, some just less so. Reed didn't touch her, didn't guide her. He climbed into the wagon. She climbed in beside him and sat straight, hands folded in her lap. He noticed the cold rolling down from the north and how little protection her dress offered. He took off his coat and held it out. She stared, then took it, laying it over her legs without putting it on. They left Redstone Crossing with laughter and boots behind them, the mule team settling into a rhythm Reed knew by heart. Neither spoke for miles. His thoughts returned to the ranch. Broken hinges, feed stores. Winter coming fast. He glanced at her wrists, raw and swollen. Watched her look toward the horizon, face carefully blank. He wondered how long she'd lived like that. Her name, learned later, was Awanada. Taken in a raid, dragged across stone and scrub. Language stripped away by men who laughed when she didn't answer. Left unsold because pride doesn't bend for comfort. Her rule now was simple. Stay alive without surrendering the last piece of herself. Reed's rule had been simple too until now. Keep the ranch breathing. Keep his dead remembered without letting the grave claim the rest of him. Buying her hadn't been part of that. But he knew one thing with certainty. He hadn't brought her home to own her. Dusk laid flat orange light over his land when they arrived. Leaning fences, thin grass, a barn door that stuck unless lifted just right. He stopped near the well and climbed down. She watched his hands, every movement measured. He offered a hand. She ignored it and stepped down herself. Bare feet striking packed dirt, a flash of pain crossing her face before disappearing. He opened the cabin door and stepped aside so she could see the space first. One room, a half wall for separation. A stove that needed sealing. A table he'd built uneven. 2 beds. He gestured to the smaller. Yours if you want, no rules, no demands. She took it in slowly. The smell of wood smoke, oil, a trace of soap that belonged to a woman. He'd never truly let go. Her eyes paused on a ring resting on the table. Reed noticed and slid it into his pocket. I'll make food, he said. He set stew out and gave her space. She ate on the floor by the fire. He ate at the table. Silence filled the room, heavy but not hostile. He laid out extra blankets, planned a divider in his head. That night, neither slept. They listened to the stove, to the night, to each other breathing. Reed thought of the grave and the truth he'd tell. Awanada watched the ceiling and waited to hear him move toward her. He didn't. Morning would come. Work would come. For now, surviving the first night without harm or demand was enough. That was the beginning. Stay, do no harm. See if trust could exist without being forced. Morning came thin and cold, the kind that slipped under the door and settled into bones before. A man was fully awake. Reed rose before the light finished breaking. The habit etched into him deeper than memory. He turned his head just enough to see her. Awanada lay curled on the narrow bed across the room, his old coat pulled up around her knees. Her eyes were closed but not deep in sleep. The faint line between her brows told him she'd been awake most of the night, same as him. He sat up slowly, joints stiff, feet meeting the cold floor. He moved quietly, not out of courtesy alone, but because noise had long stopped serving a purpose in his life. He dressed, stoked the stove, set water to heat, then stepped outside into air sharp enough to bite. The sky was clear, pale, stretched wide over brittle yellow grass and leaning fence posts. He fed the mule, scattered oats for the hens, broke the thin ice on the trough, checked the lean-to where the hinge still sagged. Everything was where he'd left. It tired, waiting, but when he turned back toward the cabin, he saw new footprints pressed into the dirt, smaller, bare, proof he wasn't alone anymore. Inside, Awanada was awake, sitting upright, nodded. They sold me because I wouldn't obey, she said later. He answered, you don't have to be quiet here, even if I speak against you. You can say what you need. That night she slept on the cot. He left a folded shirt by her bed. The next day she wore it. The silence softened. She swept, gathered eggs, worked beside him. On Thursday she asked about his wife. Fever, he said. 6 days. She spoke of her tribe, of refusing marriage, of no one coming. When she asked what she was here, he told her she was still standing. She asked where he was. Tired, he said. But trying, she almost smiled. That night she sat near his chair, placed her hand over his. He didn't pull away. She slept on the cot again. Before bed, she touched his arm as she passed, just once. Reed lay awake, listening to her breathing, and knew the silence was changing. The first snow came without warning, thin and quiet, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Reed noticed it at dawn, pale flakes drifting sideways across the yard, vanishing the moment they touched the ground. By noon, the dusting had settled into something that would stay. He tightened his coat and looked toward the cabin window. Awanada stood there, watching the sky like she was reading an old story written in white. "Storm won't last," he said when she stepped outside. "But it'll slow things down." She nodded. "Good," she said. He didn't ask why. They spent the morning securing what winter always tried to. Steel, tying down loose boards, stacking wood closer to the door, checking the mule's shelter twice. Snow creaked under their boots. The world felt smaller, quieter, as if sound itself had learned restraint. Inside, the cabin stayed warm. Reed set a pot of beans to simmer. Awanada sat at the table, mending the tear in his old shirt with a needle she'd fashioned from bone. Her fingers moved with care, not fear. When the wind rose, she flinched once, then steadied herself. Reed noticed and said nothing. After the meal, she spoke while scraping her bowl clean. "When snow came to my village, elders said it meant spirits were listening. Listening for what?" "For truth," she replied. He washed the bowls slower than needed. Truth had weight. That afternoon, the storm worsened. Snow packed against the door, whispering as it fell. Reed split wood inside, each strike echoing softly. Awanada sat near the stove, knees pulled close, watching the flame. "You don't ask me questions," she said. "I figure you'll answer the ones that matter." She looked at him then. Really looked. "Most men ask so they can decide what to do with the answers." He set the axe aside. "I already decided," he said. "You stay as long as you need." Night came early, folding the world into darkness. The coyotes didn't howl. Snow muffled everything. When Reed checked the door, ice rimmed the latch. "You'll sleep on the cot again?" he asked, not turning. "Yes," she said. Later, when the lamp burned low, she spoke from the shadows. "If I leave someday, would you stop me?" He thought a long moment. "I'd ask where you're going." "I wouldn't block the door." Silence stretched. Then footsteps. She stood beside him, close enough that he felt warmth through wool. "You're different," she said. "Different doesn't mean safe," he answered. "No," she agreed. "But it means honest." She reached out, touched his cheek with 2 fingers. Testing like one tests water for cold. He didn't move. Her hand trembled, then steadied. "I don't know how to be owned," she said. "I don't want you to be," he replied. "I don't know how to be chosen," she whispered. That stopped him. He turned, met her eyes. "Then don't choose yet," he said. "Just stay warm." She leaned into him, forehead resting against his chest. He rested his chin lightly on her hair, careful, like the moment might break if he breathed wrong. They stayed that way until the lamp guttered out. That night they slept on opposite sides of the bed, space between them wide enough for doubt, narrow enough for warmth. Morning brought silence, heavy with snow. Reed cleared the door, breath clouding the air. Awanada handed him the shovel without being asked. They worked side by side. At midday, she laughed once when he slipped. The sound startled them both. He smiled before he could stop himself. That afternoon, she braided her hair tighter, like armor. "People will come when the snow melts," she said. "They always do." "Let them," Reed said. "This land remembers who stood on it." That night she cooked without instruction. The beans tasted better. When she passed him the bowl, her fingers lingered. Not possession, not debt. Choice, learning to breathe. Spring did not arrive all at once. It tested the land first. Thin sunlight, soft mud, cold nights that pretended winter hadn't finished speaking. Reed felt it in his knees before he saw it in the grass. Awanada felt it in the air. She stood longer outside each morning, face lifted, eyes closed, as if listening for something buried beneath the thawing earth. The ranch woke slowly. Fences sagged, posts leaned, the south pen collapsed under old rot. They worked harder now, longer hours, sharing water, sharing silence. The labor wasn't heavy between them anymore. It flowed. One afternoon, while Reed drove a new post, hoofbeats sounded from the ridge. 3 riders appeared, dark against the sky. Awanada stiffened. Her hand went to the small knife at her belt. One. Reed had given her without comment weeks earlier. Reed saw it and placed himself half a step in front of her. The riders approached slow, measuring. Traders by the look of them. One called out, "Didn't know anyone still worked this land," Reed answered evenly. "I do." The man's eyes drifted to Awanada. Lingered too long. "She yours?" Silence. Tightened like wire. Reed's voice stayed calm. "She's here by choice." Awanada stepped forward then, chin lifted. "I belong to myself." The men exchanged looks. One laughed. "That's a rare thing. It's not for sale," Reed said. The riders moved on. Dust settled. Awanada exhaled shakily. "You didn't have to stand in front of me." "I know," he said. "I wanted to." That night she didn't take the cut. She lay beside him, close but not pressed, her back to his chest. He kept his hands still. Outside, frogs sang in thawed ditches. "If they come again," she said softly, "I won't hide." "You won't have to," he replied. Days passed. Grass rose green and sharp. Calves were born. The mule shed its winter coat. Awanada sang sometimes while working, low songs with no words Reed knew but felt anyway. One evening, as the sun bled red across the plains, she said, "I think my fear is changing." "Into what?" "Into something that listens before it runs." He nodded. That night she turned to face him. Her hand slid into his, deliberate. "I choose to stay," she said. He swallowed. "You don't have to say forever." "I'm not," she replied. "I'm saying now." He kissed her, then slow, unsure, like a man relearning language. She kissed him back, steady and real. No taking, no claiming. When summer came, word spread quietly. Some came curious. Some came hoping to bargain. None stayed long. The land held its ground. So did they. One morning, Awanada stood at the ridge where the riders had once appeared. "If my people ever find me," she said, "I want them to see this place." "They will," Reed said, "and they'll see you standing." She smiled full this time. The past had not vanished. It had softened. And in the wide quiet of the plains, two lives, once broken in different ways, stood not bound but joined.